And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Well, welcome, Suns fans, to another edition of the Suns Jam Session podcast. This is it. It's the end of the road, the last podcast officially of the 2021-22 season. Now, granted, podcasts will just kind of keep coming in succession, and you don't really know if they are part of which season or whatnot, but you know, when you make lists on YouTube, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and you can select the list, we have them in categories by season, by playoffs, what have you. And this will be the last one for the 2021-22 season. So, Matthew, we've done it. We've reached the end of the road, and we can't let
go.
There you go.
What's up?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, good. It's been a while. Every 2 weeks we do a pod now, so
Well,
always a lot to talk about.
Yeah, almost too much to talk about, to the point where it's like, I know that this Friday obviously is free agency, so we're going to have a podcast then, and we might have to do one like Wednesday or Thursday. Like, we might have to throw another one out there just because I don't think there's any possible way that we can get to all of the content that we have to discuss, because there's just so much to discuss, right?
Yeah, and we'll have to have the one when KD joins the Suns. We'll have to have a mega pod right then and there, right?
Oh, drop everything you're doing, folks.
Yep, we'll be on.
Join us on the Suns Jam Session podcast to talk about that. We'll see. We can maybe bring that up a little bit. You know, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the KD situation. So remind me at the back end of the podcast and we can discuss that, because obviously that's a big topic of discussion. Obviously, you're hearing from Flex from Jersey relative to this. Every other podcast has some sort of title that has to do with KD in that title. So it's understandable that when you have such an attractive name linked to a team of yours, you're going to talk about it. And we would be not doing the right thing if we didn't talk about that too.
Yep. And Antonio Henry, KD, is still alive. I'm a believer too, and I've been a believer for a while. So
I never thought he died.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
He hasn't OD'd yet, right?
Okay. KD, no
those
OD.
are baseball pitchers. Baseball pitchers are the ones that OD in the hotel rooms.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, when your job is once every 5 days, I guess I can empathize that. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A reminder to everybody who's watching along live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, please subscribe, rate, review. If you're listening to this on your drive to work tomorrow on a Tuesday morning, pull over to the side of the road, pull out your phone, give us a 5-star review on Apple, and guess what? We'll read it right here on the podcast, then correctly merge back into traffic utilizing your blinker to do so. Don't be an asshole. Always use your blinker. Matthew, it's time to pop open a nice ice-cold, teeth-cracking cold brew. What are you drinking tonight, my friend?
Yes, nothing, but I know you got something, right?
Yes, I'm having a Sam Adams Summer Ale, Citrus Wheat Ale. I got one of those like 12-pack varieties from Fry's. There's a Samuel Adams Summer like variety pack, so it's got some different things. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. I haven't had a beer in a while. Let's try this thing. So I'm gonna
do
pop
it.
Open. Yeah, that was like kind of a nice pop. I hope that audio came over perfectly. And let's talk about your Phoenix Suns. So much to talk about when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. And just talking about the NBA in general, there's been so many different things that have occurred since the last time we potted. The Golden State Warriors are once again the champions, which again is just another kick square in the balls, because I thought we were the better team than them. But you know what? I'll just say this, okay? I'll just say this. Matthew, when you look at this past season relative to the Phoenix Suns, what do you feel that you have learned? Let's put a bow on this last season. What have you learned, Matthew?
Oh, I learned that, the season doesn't matter. But then now, before I learned that, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I felt that way. Right now, I'm kind of excited for the season to start again. It kind of has a little bit of relevance to me now. Before, it doesn't mean anything after the way the season ended, of course. But right now, I'm just like, we learned a lot about our players. We're really excited, especially 2 years ago, how young this team was. All I wanted was like a Lakers first round victory, a victory over the Lakers in the first round 2 years ago. Then we got to the finals. Then last year, we were the best team in the West, right?
Mm-hmm.
What a letdown this last season was, or the last postseason. But the season, it's now I'm just like, you know what? I enjoyed it. And it's a lot of fun. Now it's on to the next venture. It's crazy, like
Mm-hmm.
how we can go from being a young team to where I just wanted a first round victory 2 years ago to now it's like KD or nothing. And if you don't get KD, is that a letdown? I don't know. But if you do get KD, and I'm gonna keep I know we're gonna talk about
It's
him,
okay, man.
but
Let's go.
if KD does come here, right? That's the apex of this franchise. We will have him and Chris Paul and Devin Booker on the same team. It won't get any better than that ever again. So it's kind of scary right now. So I kind of missed last season just because of all the wins, all the great victories towards the end of the game with Chris Paul closing it out. Just it was innocent. It was an innocent season. Now it's just turning to something where it's like all or nothing this offseason for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because a lot of Jamsters who are watching along live with us are saying a lot of the same things. The regular season's overrated. Doesn't matter until April. But I like the point that you made, Matthew, because I was thinking the same thing relative to what this last season truly felt like, right? Because obviously we're going to talk just very briefly about the NBA draft. The Phoenix Suns didn't have any stock in the draft, nor did they do anything. And I remember thinking back just 3 seasons ago where the draft night was everything. And you were constantly hoping and waiting for that moment in which the assets that were garnered in the draft equated to success. Postseason success, like you said, winning the first round, being, having a reason to root past April for the Phoenix Suns. And it felt like it was so far away. I remember where I was when I was driving and we traded to get the Marquise Chris pick. And I remember thinking back at the time, I know exactly, I was getting off the exit on I-10 and Ray, coming home. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I can't wait till like everything that we're relying on provides the sense of what we're feeling now. Maybe a sense of disappointment, but a sense that there was an opportunity for success with this team. And now we've experienced it for the past 2 seasons. Like you said, an NBA Finals appearance, the best record in the history of the franchise, an 8-game lead over any other team in the NBA. And both seasons ended in disappointment. But the fact that we were along for the ride, as corny as it may sound, sure beats the other side of the coin. It sure beats sitting around in the middle of June hoping that you get an asset in the draft that 3 years from now could potentially guide you to a playoff victory. So, yes, I think that I learned that the regular season record, it doesn't matter necessarily. It still matters, obviously, because you don't want to be the 8 seed. You want to have confidence entering the postseason. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword saying that. It's like, well, the record doesn't matter. Like, yeah, the record matters if you're going up against a team that won 64 games and you're the team that won 34 games or 37 games, like whatever the Pelicans won, right? Because your confidence level entering said postseason isn't as high. But I think I learned a couple other things when you look at kind of how the season played out, right? You look at the NBA Finals, you look at Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics, and that's always going to be your lasting impression of this season as a basketball fan, not just a Suns fan, but a basketball fan, is how do you take what you saw in that NBA Finals and apply it moving forward. And one of the first things that I noticed is like Jason Tatum and Devin Booker, same level kind of player, right?
Yes.
Like everybody likes to hype up Jason Tatum, and I get it. They push him as the face of the NBA, but now they've both lost in the finals. They're both extremely talented guys who didn't necessarily play well on the highest stage possible, outside. Conversely, you have the Warriors who did, right? So anybody who wants to sit there, because you see that debate, you saw that debate a lot during the finals. Oh, Jason Tatum's better than Booker. It's like, well, hold on. He was right back there in the same spot last season, right? And he got faced with a team that just knew how to take him out and execute better than he did. And it's a learning experience for a young man, 24, 25 years old, just as it was for Jason Tatum this year, right?
Yeah, and I feel like the NBA, especially the fans on Twitter, everybody is just really talking about comparisons all the time. You can't just enjoy one player just them being themselves, because we have to compare, especially when these guys they haven't reached their ceiling yet. We thought maybe Booker has maybe this year leadership, but there's more to his game that's going to come. He's going to be even a better player next year.
Yes, he
is.
So
I don't think we can compare these guys. And Jason Tatum, he's a guy that goes from a top 6 player to a top 20 just like that.
Just
one
like
game
that.
top.
Yes.
And Jaylen Brown, all of a sudden, he's a better player than Jason Tatum some games. So it's just like, let these guys figure it out. It's a roller coaster until they can kind of be more consistent in the playoffs. And I enjoy both of them. Like, I was kind of a Jason Tatum hater, but I realized I'm like,
Me-
is it just
me
because
too.
everyone likes him so much? Is it because everyone puts him on a pedestal? And that might be the reason, but I can just enjoy his game now, and I don't like to compare because like there's no rivalry, there's nothing there. They don't have the same game at all. Like, why do we have to do that? And the whole thing where the whole Kobe thing too, that was kind of weird where people like when he texted Kobe, I don't mind him doing that at all. It's just like people go after him for that. Then
Yeah.
Devin Booker is compared to Kobe, even though he never compared himself to Kobe. So then there's that comparison. There's just too much. We can't enjoy anything anymore where we can just watch these players and just sit back and relax and enjoy the game.
That's the way the NBA is. They're constantly looking for the next thing, right? When Kobe came around, he was supposed to be the next Jordan. And then after Kobe retired, we're at that phase right now where they're trying to find the next Kobe. And you have, Jason Tatum was wearing like a number 24 purple and gold armband in the NBA Finals as a tribute to his favorite player, much akin to how Devin Booker has be legendary. These guys revere Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
But again, like no one will ever be another Kobe. They're going to be the first Devin Booker, the first Jason Tatum. And I'm with you. Like I am a noted Tatum hater. I've stated on numerous times that I think he's overrated, and I probably feel that way kind of much akin to you. I feel like he's being shoved down my throat from an NBA level. I don't think that his skill set is something that is overly spectacular when I have someone who I feel is really spectacular in my hometown and they never talk about him. I think it's more of that's what creates that abrasiveness for me towards that player. He's a damn fine player, and he did the same thing in the NBA Finals that Devin Booker did, is he just didn't get it done. And you just have to, like you said, Matthew, you can compare there's things you should compare and there's things that are over compared. And I think it's the over comparisons that when you see Jason Tatum and you see Devin Booker are just becoming kind of lazy, if you will. It's again, they're the first, if they're like people, but he, like you said, he's a completely different player. He really likes perimeter and he likes he has no mid range jump shot. Whereas that's where Devin Booker cooks.
I know.
So it's like completely
opposite.
different. And I like what Tim says in the chat. He says a Tatum hater is a tater. So
tater nuts.
Tater
nuts. Yeah.
Another thing that I learned is the Suns aren't the Warriors.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is if you want to be successful in the NBA, you have to pony up. Right now, granted, like the Warriors were in a unique situation in which Klay Thompson went down and was out for quite some time. And then you had Steph Curry broke his wrist against the Phoenix Suns one season. So they had a couple seasons where they could sit back, rest guys as much as they want, hit the draft, and revamp and come back as a viable and deadly team that ultimately won a championship. But the difference is the fact that if you want to be like the Warriors, if you want to copy their blueprint, if you will, to be successful, you have to spend money. And like the Suns aren't the Warrior. If you want to be like the Warriors, you have to spend. And that's what's going to be interesting about this season. Because you take a look at the Warriors, and they have a player in Steph Curry who's going to make $53 million, 53.8. Klay Thompson, 37.9. Andrew Wiggins, 29.5. Draymond Green, 24.9. This is a team that doesn't care about the luxury tax, the salary cap. They don't care because they know that winning championships is what it's all about. So they'll spend to do so. The Suns, in an effort to try to, again, if you're sitting here and you're trying to figure out, well, what do we got to do to be a championship level team? If you want to look at the Warriors as a blueprint, the answer is spend money. The opportunity is in front of the Phoenix Suns this year where they're going to have to spend some money if they want to do that. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, the best thing for this team, whether I believe he is worth a max contract or not, is paying Ayton and keeping him here. I mean, you've heard it on the Bill Simmons podcast, right, Matthew? Bill Simmons talks about how every other team would benefit from having DeAndre Ayton. He's like, the Spurs, they'd be good with DeAndre Ayton. The Pistons would be good. The Bulls would be good. Everybody knows that DeAndre Ayton going to your team makes it better, so why get rid of him?
Yeah, so I don't – when I wrote the notes for this pod – well, I mean, would you be surprised if I told you that 2 pages of it was just Ayton notes, just me going off on DeAndre Ayton? I mean, it's not going off; it's just talking about him to myself. But it's nuts. Of course, you're not gonna be the Warriors. So there's a comparison again. We're not gonna be the Warriors,
but you can be.
You can be. You can spend. And we spent. I mean, we were scared to spend the money on Chris Paul. You know what I mean? Like we're just not used to it. And these players right now, we're kind of questioning: do we spend? I feel like a lot of Suns fans would rather spend the money on a Cameron Johnson than DeAndre Ayton right now.
Yes,
but then now
fucking
I don't know.
weird.
Maybe people are coming around more DeAndre Ayton lately. Of course, we talked about the last pod we had a year ago. It's been for forever. I feel like where we talked about where DeAndre Ayton, if we bring back everybody and do this again, I wouldn't be upset. But now the KD thing's in there, then it's like, yeah, like of course I would trade DeAndre Ayton for KD and Bradley Beal. Maybe that's it. But to bring back DeAndre Ayton, it's not a bad thing. It's a good offseason. I was actually watching PHNX Sports and like Gerald Bourguet was actually talking about it's still a good offseason if you resign these guys and just have the same team come back, because whatever happened in the playoffs was just it's a fluke thing.
Yep.
You know, when you look back at it, that's why no one said anything. DeAndre Ayton, of course, did not say anything. He left and didn't talk to the media, but no one got onto anybody. I mean, even the softball game that happened a couple days ago, they were talking about DA and they were just supporting him. Like, that's what you have to do during these situations because you don't know what's going to happen. You can't just attack somebody, and no one's really blaming DeAndre. It's just now that the Suns are a destination, now that we have Booker and Chris Paul, there's just so many other options. And when you think about last season, you think about DeAndre and you're just like, do we wait for this guy? Do we really just, hope he's an all-star? Maybe he's a superstar. Who knows? Like, but then when there's options out there, now it's just like, I don't know if we can wait. I don't know if we can. And a lot of people don't want to just hang everything on Chris Paul and just say, oh, he got us here. He's the reason for it. A lot of people say that. And it is true. It is definitely true.
Yeah, he's
big getting factor. Older. Yeah, he's a big factor. So there's just so many options with this team this offseason where you can't. I feel like it'd be a shock if we strike out this offseason to where we come back next season and we still look good, right? Because it's still basically a championship team right now. We haven't won it.
It's a 64-win team.
Yeah, we're still
exactly.
Young
the window's still open. And
Mm-hmm.
as we'll reference here momentarily, like the rest of the teams the rest of the league's catching up. They're trying to catch the Phoenix Suns right now. So you have to make some very smart. That's where I think you could potentially strike out, if you will, is because this is a very important offseason. Unbelievably important, because all those other teams are coming for the Suns. And you have to make the right decisions to sustain the success that you've had at the level that you've had it. And that's going to be a challenge. And again, we don't know what's going to happen. The interesting thing is the market's going to dictate what DeAndre Ayton is worth, and we're going to find out by the end of this week, right?
Yeah.
July 1st, this Friday, that's when free agency essentially begins. You'll start hearing shit on Thursday. I mean, it's about to be a very interesting and exciting offseason for the Phoenix Suns. As our buddy Flex from Jersey said recently on the Coast to Coast podcast, he thinks this is going to be one of the most interesting off seasons that he's ever seen, not just for the Suns, but in the NBA. And we're already starting to see some of that trickle down stuff, so it's going to be interesting to see what Phoenix does, how they navigate the DeAndre Ayton thing. But again, in my personal opinion, our culture is close. Like you said, we are a destination now. There's guys who are like, listen, if I'm leaving this situation, I want to go to Phoenix. I want to be a part of what they're doing there. Our culture is close to being a championship level culture. But until we exceed that luxury tax, we're just like everybody else in the league. The Warriors are one of those teams that takes a big swing, and they're going for the glory, Huck. And you know what? They were rewarded with the championship because of that, because they paid for it. They paid for it. And again, it ain't my money, so I don't give a shit. Spend. Like, to your KD point, KD ain't going to be cheap if he comes here. And he's going to be somebody who's 34, 35 years old. He's at the back end of his 34. Career too. So short-term greed, long-term greed. Short-term greed, does he bring us a championship? If he doesn't, long-term greed shot, because you're going to give up assets for it. So, there's a lot of different debates that we could do. We could do a whole episode on KD alone. But again, interesting. Low Sun says, I disagree with us being a destination. That's an interesting... I wonder why that is, because I definitely see us as a destination.
Yeah, it's if KD, I don't think KD wants to. To me, KD re-signing with Brooklyn, personally, I just feel like that would be a shocker, more of a shocker than him going somewhere else, right? Than to like Phoenix or maybe even, I don't know. Phoenix just seems like the right spot, but staying in Brooklyn just doesn't make sense. I know the Kyrie signed today; he's in Brooklyn, but that doesn't mean anything. Like all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Oh, it's off." Like KD's gone. No, it's not the days. Scottsdale, Phoenix, whatever. It's hot here. Who gives a shit? But all players want to play with Booker. It's who you want to play with too. Booker, Chris Paul. They want to win a championship. And if KD comes here and he's in that division with LeBron James, Steph Curry, like that's what it's 4 games right each. Do they still do 4 games each? It is right, 2 and 2 home. So that's good for the NBA. It's good for everybody. That's good basketball. KD can have his revenge on the Warriors. So it makes sense for him to come here, not just destination, but just all around. It makes absolutely the most sense for him to be in Phoenix other than Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, it's like, I feel like it's over. They had their chance. They had their guys. What, you're going to go back to Brooklyn and hope Kyrie plays? And then what's going to happen there, man? You have nothing there to help you win a championship. The Suns have the most right now, and they don't have to offer both Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges, right? It just has to be a Cameron Johnson, which would suck and hurt, but it's what you have to do to get KD to come here.
Yeah, it'd be most likely Cameron Johnson. You'd have to throw another contract in there, something like a Jay Crowder, because again, I mean, he's making $42 million this upcoming season.
Yeah.
But that being said, the thing that Brooklyn most likely will want is a ton of picks. So, I mean, you'd be definitely leveraging your future. Yeah, deal them. I'm with you.
Well, because we're still young, too. I just feel like Booker's still young. And if we can keep Mikal Bridges, like those are two young pieces still. So it's not like you're giving everything away just for some old guys. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hear you. And I see a lot of the chat, Coach Fallen Founder says, sorry I'm late. Don't know if y'all discussed it, but Bill Simmons talked about a straight trade of KD for Booker. Eddie Johnson said no, but barely. There's when you talk about KD, and Kenneth Payne says KD won't leave now, unfortunately. Again, we don't know that. The whole Kyrie thing is still up in the air. You have to think about how that player performed last season and what he did again, he's about me, not we. And that's the problem with Kyrie. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's just who he is. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, he's all about me, not about we, and you can't rely on a guy like that. Conversely, you have Kevin Durant, a guy who's played on Team USA with Devin Booker, knows how this guy operates, definitely has a relationship with Chris Paul, and wants to be a part of something successful. And to your point, like, if you want to come over and exact revenge on the Western Conference, like, Phoenix is a damn fine destination to do so. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Durant ends up in Phoenix. I wouldn't be. And it's interesting because Flex from Jersey said on the Coast to Coast podcast, he's like, hey, if KD can't come, there's other people out there who want to. And he was referencing LeBron James. Matthew, what would you think if LeBron James became a Phoenix Sun?
How would
I fucking deal with that?
I was going to say, how would you? We had to go back like Joe Rogan and delete all those podcasts about LeBron James.
Just
man.
all my continual
like
LBJ rants where I just go off for 10 minutes.
Suns would be playing the Hawks, and you would spend 20 minutes talking about how much you hate LeBron James.
This sounds about
so we
right.
have to go back and delete all those. But yeah, of course, I would love it. I would love LeBron to make everybody so much better, and he's still amazing to watch and play. Like, it makes sense. Like, the destination Phoenix, it makes sense here, man. It's a beautiful place to live, and plus,
especially
like, the players
during
around
the season.
Yeah, the players around LeBron, like Chris Paul and Booker, it doesn't get any better than that. Two guards while he plays big, like that'd be perfect. So it's crazy. Remember, we used to always talk about this where we wanted LeBron James on this team with Dragon Bender, Marquise Chris.
Yeah.
But this actually makes sense. You look at every other destination, it just doesn't. I mean, if you go to LA Clippers, maybe, or something, if you do a trade with Kawhi or something, I don't know. But like, right now, Phoenix is the best option for a lot of these players that want to get that championship in. Plus, the thing is, there wouldn't be like an asterisk, right? They would win with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, who have not won one yet, and they would get them their first championship. So they can't say, which always sucks, like even Kevin Durant winning in Golden State, oh, these guys won with those players that already won before. They can't say that. So that's what these players, I feel like, are looking at too, is if where could we win where we won't get that asterisk? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And again, when it comes to LeBron, there's no more vocal LBJ hater than probably me. And I'll tell you, if he comes here, I'll feel like the whole Chris Paul thing all over again, because Chris Paul annoyed the shit out of me for years until he became a Phoenix Suns and a member of the Phoenix Sun, and then I respected him. And you got to think, like, who does LeBron James respect as a general manager? James Champ Jones, who has publicly said, I don't want shit to do with the draft. We don't deal with young players here. Both LeBron, pretty much, and James Jones. Like, you come here, you're working with vets, okay? There's no rookies on the goddamn thing. We're not worried about draft picks. It's like LeBron's heaven. And trust me, he's right at that point where he's exhausted his funds, if you will, with Los Angeles, because he's already destroyed that franchise. So maybe he gets traded here, finds Devin Booker, and takes back his number 23 jersey, the last number 23 jersey that he ever wore as a member of the Lakers, that he signed after Devin Booker destroyed him in the first round in Game 6. I don't know. But again, what's interesting, and the reason we have these kind of conversations is because we're not the Oklahoma Cities of the world. We're not the Utah Jazzes of the world. We are a place that has become a destination that has members of the team and an organization overall that is progressive, that is appealing to other fan bases or not fan bases, but players in other markets. And, again, you take a look at what the Suns have done recently. Their new assistant GM, Morgan Cato, the first woman of color to hold the assistant GM position, right? You have the Suns exec, Ryan Resch, who came out as the first openly gay person to work in NBA ops. This is a very progressive franchise, an African-American head coach and general manager. These are things that are appealing to members of the NBA as well. They should be. This is a very forward first franchise. It just is crazy that you have all this great progressive behavior and Bob Sarver's the fucking owner of the team. It's like the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long that's going to last. Nobody really does. That's still been mum's the word.
He's gone.
But again, when you look at this team, you can mention names like LeBron, you can mention names like KD, and they're not a punchline to a joke. It's a possibility.
Yeah. And to go back, the Suns are progressing, but like all the things that they did should just be a natural thing now with the openly gay executive. That was actually a really good article by Kevin Arnowitz. The interview that was really, really
fantastic.
Good. So I read that. That was awesome. And it's just something where everyone's going to be eventually comfortable with it, like all of it. So the Suns are ahead of it, right? I mean,
Yes.
It's going to happen sometime later or not. Like this stuff's going to come out to where franchises will be progressing forward, and Sarver's not that guy. Sarver's on his way out. Sarver's a dude where he's stuck his own shit. Like he's just stuck there where he wants to be. It's his way or the highway, right? No, if you want to be successful,
it might be the highway for him.
It's gonna be. Absolutely. He will be out of here. If we get any of these guys, even like a Bradley Beal, Sarver's not going to be here, right? He cannot be here. These guys, these free agents will come here, or before they even like take an offer, they'll be like, you got to make sure that guy's out of there. It's absolutely something where he's going to be gone next year. So that's going to be awesome. And that's going to be probably the biggest positive for this franchise moving forward is that piece of it. So, I don't know. I just think there's just so much going on again with the Suns, and it made me just wonder, like these off seasons for the Suns are like more entertaining almost in the regular season. And the playoffs.
Yeah,
it's crazy now.
Well, it's because we all enter that mode of like a 2K player, right? Like it's almost obnoxious to go to Suns Facebook because of some of the trade possibilities, or anytime anybody might potentially opt out of something, everybody on Suns Facebook has to mention it. It's a positive. Kyrie, should we get him? Like, no. But everyone's like, they put together their 2 cents because this is the time of year, creating is half the fun, right? Like you've played 2K in the past. I play 2K. Anytime you do anything, anytime you're in creation mode, it's the most fun. The most to me, when I play franchise mode on 2K, the fun isn't playing the games or playing the season. It's crafting a roster so you can sim through that season and see how they do. It's going into my career and creating your guy, right? And putting all the little tchotchkes on him and whatnot. Like that's what's fun. And that's what mode we're in right now. We're on the precipice of the creation mode of the 2022-23 roster. And because of the way that this team is played with the assets they have and the names linked to them, it's an unbelievably exciting time because to your point, even 3 years ago, we were making these little moves like, hey man, Ryan Anderson, what the fuck? It's like, ooh,
don't remind me.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a totally now it's KD, potentially LeBron, Bradley Beal, all these different names that could be linked to the Suns, and they make sense because these are players who want to be a part of something successful, a franchise that is successful, trying to get to the promised land, and we're trying to see if it all goes together. So this is a very exciting week for the Phoenix Suns. I'm just going to touch ever so briefly. The NBA draft obviously happened last Thursday. Did you watch the NBA draft, Matthew?
I did. I went to a bar after work with some OKC fans. We sat there.
Nice.
They got their guy Chet. It was fun. Like we were actually the only ones really in the bar watching it. But I had absolutely this is the first year in a while where I didn't YouTube these guys. I didn't look them up. I had no idea who was getting drafted. All right.
Nice.
And of course, it is nice. But then I also feel like, am I not preparing myself for the podcast? But then I'm like, do the Chancers even give a shit? Like, I don't care about the draft right now. I can care less about these younger players. I think we're young enough as it is. I think any of these players being drafted in the top 13, like in the lottery, I don't need to know. I can look them up later, right?
Yeah.
I'll be okay, right? Because I feel like I'm kind of letting people down by not doing my studying and just getting ready for the draft. But I was like, it came so quickly. I'm like, I'm not even gonna dive into these guys till later. I don't think so. I sat there, I watched it. The Knicks messed it up. I was like, the Knicks are probably gonna land somewhere where they're gonna want just that other guy that didn't get picked up. Maybe they get like the Bradley Beal. So it's always just the same stuff. OKC had like 5 picks. So it was fun to watch. It's just, it makes me kind of mad where I didn't really know who these guys were. So I had no one really to root for. What did you do?
Well, same thing. I watched it, and same thing. I did zero. I normally go to like Kevin O'Connor's page because he does a great job of draft prep and all that stuff. I didn't even look at that this year. No desire, because like there's no way, in my opinion, the Phoenix Suns were going to try to trade into the draft and garner an asset, right? Now, if there was any transactions, the primary reason I watched was in case the Phoenix Suns did anything where they traded something and tried to trade in to get a pick or utilize something as an asset to try to move DeAndre and whatever it may be. Cameron Johnson, his name was linked to potential trade possibilities relative to draft day. So I was watching for that reason. More than anything, I was just watching to see the dumb shit that Kendrick Perkins was saying. Like, as he started comparing players, Wancho, whatever the guy's name is, the guy who got, I don't know the guy's name who got picked number 1 overall, man. The guy from Duke, who looks just like,
starts with a P, right?
Poncho, I don't know.
Hermaphrodite.
Yeah. But he's it's just like I was watching for kind of the entertainment value. I'm a NBA fan, so I was watching there just to kind of see what's happening because I like to see the transactions. Who's going where. You kind of get in tune with who some of the guys are based on some of the podcasts we listened to and the coverage that was provided. Paulo Banchero.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Westville. Appreciate that. But again, I'm with you, Matthew. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing this podcast as a service because people don't come to this podcast to listen to your and I's draft analysis, right? I just wanted to say and throw out there for the few minutes we're talking about the NBA draft, like the fact that the Phoenix Suns had a very silent night, which I wrote a piece for Bright Side of the Sun referencing silent night and mentioning how it's like, it might be the summer equinox, but it feels like it's the winter solstice because it's like a silent night. It's like we were Christmas caroling because nothing happened. And I'm good with that. I'm 100% good. We shouldn't care about the draft anymore.
I was so happy the Suns didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Unless they were trying to move like a Jay Crowder or something and get some picks, get some younger guys out of that. I was thinking maybe like a vet like that or like Sham. I think Sham is probably going to be here next year, but like a Jay Crowder, I think, because I heard they were kind of shopping him around to other teams. I think there was 4 or 5 teams interested. So I don't know if that had to do with the draft or not. But it just wasn't interesting. And I think we even texted each other like, hey, if there's something happen, we'll do a pod. I'm like, dude, just please nothing happen because I don't care.
I'm at a bar with my OKC friends. They're very hyped up on
not that reason,
Chet Holmgren.
Yeah. Got a little crazy in there.
But I mean, that was the NBA draft. And Suns fans, if you're frustrated that the Suns didn't get to participate in that, that's on you. You can choose to be frustrated for those reasons, respectfully. And I respectfully will not be frustrated because, again, I don't think that anything that could have been done in the NBA draft is going to benefit this team to help them win the championship this year because that's the focus. This isn't 3 years ago. This isn't like, hey, what do we got to do to become relevant again? Or, hey, what do we have to do to get to the playoffs or let alone win a series? Now we're at that. We're in championship mode. So fuck the draft.
Yeah, you have to win this year. Yep.
Yes,
this year, not 3 years from now.
Yes, not 3 years from now. Speaking of things that don't fucking matter, the summer league is just around the corner. Suns' first game against the Lakers, July 8th, 7 p.m. on ESPN2. Matthew, will you be tuning in? Why or why not?
Yeah, sure. I'll be tuning in. You know what? Iffy Lundberg, though, that's one name.
Yeah,
right? That was fun. That was fun last year. Check that out. I have no interest really. I will watch. So of course, what else am I gonna watch? Right? I'm going back to watching Oz on HBO, so I gotta watch something.
Man, you're going way back.
Yeah, there's no Yankees baseball on right now on Fox, so I gotta watch something. So I'll definitely be watching the Summer League. What about you?
Oh, of course, I'm a basketball fan. I don't think we'll be doing post-game podcasts trying to break down the Summer League that has Iffy Lundberg and Lewis King, who was the Summer League MVP last year, or Vrenz Blejon Bruh or whatever Blejon Burr from Belgium
Mm.
who played with the G League Windy City Bulls. Like, I'll tune in. I'll watch a little bit of basketball. We'll probably reference it a little bit on our next podcast after that, but it's not going to be something that I'm unbelievably tuned into because, again, the summer league is designed for players who are recently drafted by your team just to see how they look athletically. You know, it's one thing to watch a guy when he plays in college, put him up against some pros and see how he moves in those situations. So, again, don't truly care.
Bigger and better news coming.
Amen. Well, let's go around the NBA because there's a lot of things that are happening. Obviously, we're leading up to free agency, which again is officially July 1st, but you start to, and that's what, 9 p.m. July 30th. So Thursday at 9 p.m. is kind of when a lot of those different transactions start. Matthew, I recommend that you and I do a podcast probably at that time where we just come on here 9 p.m. We can just start bullshit and talk about some potential free agent targets. And then
yes,
in live time on Twitter, we will find shit out that is going, and that's fun stuff, right? Like those are fun.
it is.
So
yeah, just like at the NBA draft, I was kind of spilling the beans a little bit, sitting there with my phone. They didn't have their phones out with the notifications, so I knew
oh
it was
man,
so yeah.
Like,
so
dude,
I was just
bet
doing
you they're
that.
gonna take Poncho Holgram.
Yeah, I already forgot. No, I think even Woj and is it Zach what is it? I haven't listened to this podcast in a while.
Shams?
No,
Zach
it's
Lowe?
Woj, Zach Lowe. They had like
Oh.
a show where they they just sit there like we're gonna do, and they just go through the free agency when everything pops up.
Yeah.
Woj will let us know. So yeah, I mean we should do it because the Suns will be in the middle of the Suns, Lakers, and Brooklyn. It's gonna be the big teams. It's gonna be some big moves, man.
The heavy hitters, the heavy hitters.
It's better than the championship, right? Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I wouldn't know. I just wouldn't know. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I've never cried, so I don't know.
In theory, but obviously, going around the NBA, some of the news that's out there. The first big thing that happened right before this podcast started recording is the fact that John Wall will be bought out by the Houston Rockets and will officially become a free agent. And it is reported that he is going to sign with the Los Angeles Clippers, Matthew. So John Wall, along with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Norman Powell, Rocco. I mean, that there is a team that they're trying to put together. What are your thoughts on John Wall as he enters the possibility of coming over to our division and helping strengthen that Los Angeles Clippers team?
It's a good veteran presence. I think what Wall was trying to do with Houston, he said they had good players there, but it's just very, very young. It's hard to be, I feel like, the John Wall of nowadays, where you just have to be that veteran guy to come in, give some really good minutes, some decent minutes, some nights. He can still do that. So it's a good team because they already have the veterans there. They already have the leadership. They have
a lot of veterans.
They have champions on that team. So I just think that this is what he needs in his career. Does it scare me as a Suns fan? Maybe. I mean, he's going to be backup coming off the bench, right? As long as they're healthy, he's going to be the backup guy coming off the bench. Unless they mix him in that, I feel like maybe he will start at first, and then they'll be like, you know what, you're probably going to go to the bench. That's something where I can see that happening, but I'm not too worried about it. I mean, is this something that frightens you? I mean, it's not. It's a big name, but just where he's at in his career,
yes,
I think it's a good fit for him. And it might be scary in that way, but I don't think it's too much to where I'm just like, all right, Suns have to get Bradley Beal. Suns have to get KD. I'm not like that. I'm not thinking that right now.
But see, so it doesn't scare me, but it does concern me because, again, the Clippers are aligning themselves to make a very, very solid run at a championship. They are no longer a team that we just dismiss because of, injuries. Now, that being said, it is a team full of injury-prone players, adding John Wall to that mix, right? Yeah. He's a player who didn't play all last season at 31 years old, sat out. He played 40 games the previous season, had 20.6 points per game and 6.9 assists. He didn't play the season before that. He had a left heel, an Achilles injury, and then an infection as well. And if you look at his career holistically, this is where I don't think he will start for that team because he started 601 of 613 games in his entire career. There's none of this, I'm going to go sign here and I'm going to be a backup player. Now, he's going there and he wants to play. Now, that being said, I think John Wall is one of those players who the modern NBA has kind of passed him by. Does he have the ability to score? Yes. Does he have the ability to distribute? Yes. He's a career 32% shooter from beyond the arc. And in the modern NBA, especially on that team where they need to have the ability to spread the floor to be effective, I don't know if he necessarily fits into that offense the way that he probably wants to. Couple that with age and the fact that they're injury prone, I could see it being a team very similar to like the Lakers last season. A lot of big names, right? A lot of big names.
Yes. Yep.
But a lot of injuries along the whole way, and as top heavy as they be. And I John Wall will probably sign one of those veteran minimum deals. It'd be fucking ridiculous because he's getting bought out for I think $41 million of his $47 million contract. Is they're like, here's $41 million. That's what Houston's doing to get rid of him and continue with their youth movement. So he's going to take one of those veteran minimum deals. But that being said, they're still a top heavy team when it comes to the price of their stars. So it'll be interesting to see how healthy they could potentially stay for the season, right?
Yeah, and like Kenneth Payne, like he said what we said, Clippers are old AF as fuck. And I'm thinking that, yeah, they are in the injury prone. I just think we have to realize too, like, I know the Clippers are scary of what they have, but they've failed so many times, right? Just trying to make an effort to win the championship. It's like maybe they just are who they are. You know what I mean? Like
people could say the same about the Suns, huh?
Exactly. Maybe Chris Paul is who he is. That's why we need Kevin Durant here, but maybe he is who he is, where he hasn't won anything, right? I mean, he won it with Steph, but then Steph's won it without, you know what I mean? So you get into that kind of talk. So no, I think the Clippers are absolutely scary. I think that they can be a freakish team out in the West again this year, but can they keep it up till the playoffs start? I mean, we were so close to seeing maybe even Kawhi coming back against in the playoffs, you know, in the play-in situation where he was close to coming back. So if that's another situation where that happens, like, no, I'm done with this team. If that's the way they're going to be every year, then I'm just done.
And the big question mark with that team though is like, who is John Wall now? Who is Kawhi Leonard now? You know, I mean, Paul George came back, but like we don't know two of those cogs.
All looks good.
You know, so
two of those cocks,
two of those cocks. I mean, we don't know who those cocks are anymore. So we'll just see. Another trade that's already occurred was Christian Wood went to the Dallas Mavericks. The Rockets received the number 26 pick in this past draft. Boban, Sterling Brown, Trey Burke, and Marquise Chris. Is that a steal for Dallas? And again, does that concern you? Because this is another team, a competitor of ours that just beat us in the playoffs, and they got better.
Yeah, they did, but Christian Wood, the thing I think about is like if we bring back Ayton and we just are the same team again last year, we're still better than Dallas. We lost to them in the 7 games, but does that even matter? No one believes in that Dallas team to beat the Suns again in 7. If whatever happened to that team happens again, maybe they can. But I just think the Suns are still better with Christian Wood. Ayton dominates that dude every time they play each other. So Suns are still better. That's how I look at it. Of course, Luka might be in shape this year. Who knows? Maybe he will give a shit this year. So that'll be scary. But Christian Wood, just adding that guy, it's not something where it puts him over the top of the Suns. That's not it. It's not like the other guys we'll talk about in a little bit, but he's still a good player. I just don't think it makes them better than the Suns.
Well, but it definitely makes them better.
It does make them better, yeah.
That's my thing. You know, you take a look at who that team was. The team that beat the Suns in the playoffs they had Dwight Powell playing the 5, right? Like Christian Wood is a definite upgrade from Dwight Powell. You know, you look at last season, 17.9 points, 10 rebounds, and 39% from beyond the arc. So he's a solid 5. And he's in, you know, $15 million a year. I mean, that's a hell of a deal for him. You know, so again, I think we don't know whether or not that makes them better than the Suns because we don't know who the Suns are going to be next year. But we can say that, hey, this guy is assisting this roster and making this team better. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, a lot of teams coming for the Suns, right? You know, again, there's the rumor of Bradley Beal potentially to LA. There's the rumor of Kyrie potentially to LA. You know, he signed with the Nets, but that is in an effort to be traded, right? You know, he probably has something going on behind the scenes, like I'm going to sign, but you're going to trade me, right? That's why the whole KD thing, some people are saying, nope, it's over because Kyrie signed. No. Kyrie might be trying to get his ass back out to LA to play with LeBron.
Yeah,
right?
No one's going to be there. Those two guys will not be in Brooklyn.
I like
just
it.
Come on, they're not going to be in Brooklyn.
I like it.
I'll bet something. I'll shave my head.
Okay. The only guy left standing in Brooklyn, Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons. Yeah, right. You know, I still don't blame that guy for getting there, but that is crazy, right? You leave one situation and now, but that's the way it is in the NBA. You're never stable anywhere. So you can't count on anybody the next year, even if you guys are good together. You guys are boys or whatever, like KD and Kyrie, they are. but they're not going to be together. It's about winning. It's on the court. Off the court, fine, they can be friends, but on the court it wasn't working, so you got to go elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. And, both might end up potentially in the same division playing against each other. Wouldn't that be great if Kyrie ends up in LA and then Katie's like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to Phoenix. We'll see what's up.
That's going to be
Yeah,
insane.
PDog006 says LA can't afford Beal. Matthew, what do we know about contracts?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Tear
matter.
him up.
Exactly. Because
Don't
what Beal
feed me
could do
that.
is Beal could sign. There's a couple different things that go on here. The
Yeah.
rumor is Beal potentially might, he opted out, so he could potentially re-sign with the Wizards for the Supermax. But it could be a sign and trade as well. And guess what? You could do some sort of three-way deal that involves Westbrook, whose contract is very comparable, getting out of there and then doing it with a third-party team, potentially like an OKC. I don't know. I'm not the trade wizard, but there's definitely a way to where it could happen, where Beal could end up in LA. I could definitely see that happening, right? I could definitely see Kyrie happening.
Mhm.
But again, I talked about Christian Wood and some of our Jamsters, rightfully so. Again, thank you to the Jamsters for watching right now. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button below and subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. A lot of them are mentioned. Jalen Brunson's probably gone from Dallas. So, Christian Wood comes in, that's a plus. Jalen Brunson leaving, that's a minus because he'll probably end up in New York, right? So you're correct there, and good for shouting that out. But again, Los Angeles Lakers, Los Angeles Clippers, Dallas, all these teams are trying to get better and better, right? The Suns have to make a splash, right? Other teams are improving. What is the definition of a splash to you, Matthew?
Oh, well, it's KD or LeBron or Bradley Beal, right? I think it starts with Bradley Beal. I think that's where it starts because these are killers that you want on your team. You have to understand, I think everyone understands, right? That Lillard, Beal, and KD, Lillard's probably not in it, but who knows? That might pop up somewhere down the line where he might be traded. Who knows? But those are like three mindsets that you want on this team. That's a splash because it matches what we have there in our leaders and Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Because those guys want guys that get it, right? The big reason I think why DA is always out there, he's on the trade block, because he doesn't get it yet. He's young. He still has time. Like the Andrew Wiggins comparison that Dave King threw out there, it's good. Maybe he just needs more time and he can come back later on when he's ready. But right now, it's about championship next year. It's about that mindset where these guys want to come in and just win and do absolutely everything. Unless they get injured, they have a chance to win. I just think the splash has to be those three guys. That's enough. That's a splash. Anything else is kind of like, okay, it was a good offseason. It's nothing to be negative about. It's, of course, giving your hopes up. Flex is doing his best out there, giving us the information. He's not definite on anything. He's just saying it's a possibility.
Yep.
And who knows what's going to happen because there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. But if you're going to talk about a splash, it has to be those three guys. But I would still not be upset if we bring DA back and we still have the same team. Of course, a little bit of me, I'd be like kind of a little bit disappointed. But it'd be a good offseason still.
And to me, I think that's kind of a splash, is bringing back DA. I think that's the Suns saying, no, we're sticking with this core. And you guys can bring in all these big names and try to build your super teams. And you know what? We're going to stick with the horse that got us here. And that's the way that we navigated drafts in the past and made transactions that set us up for success long-term. We're sticking with that long-term deal. Because I'm reminded very much so of a 2004/5 Phoenix Suns team that took the league by storm. And then rather than committing to that team, they decided to tear it up a little bit, right? Buy Joe Johnson, by Quentin Richardson, hello, Kurt Thomas and Boris Diaw, and it's just when that happens, you have some core pieces, but you're not the same team. And don't get me wrong, like those teams were very successful moving forward, but they didn't have the same pizzazz and they didn't have the same lethal way of playing that 04-05 team did. No team, in my opinion, that was the best team. I know 05, or I think it was 05-06 or 07-08, one of those, or 6-07, one of those teams was a lot of people considered better. That 04-05 team was fucking lethal, and they got rid of a lot of the assets and made them lethal. So to me, re-signing DA would be a splash, and I would love to have that happen. Now, that being said, there are some trade rumors that I've put out there on brightsideofthesun.com because we wouldn't be prudent to say, hey, is there ways to upgrade this team outside of those big names, right? Like, how can we improve this roster around the fringes rather than moving some main and chess pieces like DA, right? So one of the ones that I brought up recently was a potential bringing in Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish is a guy who just has been very, underwhelming is kind of a word that would describe the way that he's played thus far in his career. Originally coming out of Duke, he obviously he played with R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson. He was the 10th overall pick in the 2019 draft. Through his career, he's averaged 10.5 points per game, 3.2 total rebounds, 1.3 assists. From beyond the arc, he's a 32.5% shooter. He only shot 25.8% in his time with New York after being traded from the Atlanta Hawks to New York. And he's somebody who this season is going to garner $5.9 million a year. Now, granted, he'll be eligible for a rookie extension as well, but I think that's somebody potentially the Suns could take a swing at, if you can, Landry Shamet or something, just any way to get rid of Landry Shamet. Cam Reddish could be
He's
one
always
of
going to
those
be thrown out there. Yeah, I know. And
what are your
I think,
thoughts on Cam Reddish? Another
I was going to
Cam.
bring up
Campaign, Cam Reddish, Cam Johnson.
Yeah, bring it on. The 3 C's, sailing the 3 C's. I think that he reminds me of like a Shamet for the reason only that, is this too big of a market now for him to play in? I mean, he's playing in New York, but I mean, not the market, but the actual team and the expectations coming in here. He can fold under, and I just don't want to deal with that. Yeah, a guy like him needs to be on a team where, like a Trailblazers team or something, where he can find himself, under the radar. This team is expecting too much this year. Like it was too much for Shamet, right? Shamet's been in the league for so long, and I guess he's not really a bust or anything, but he just made his way around the league. And like you bring a guy like Shamet in here, and he only had 3 good games this year. Like you're going to get worse than that from a Cam Reddish because the expectations are too high right now for the Suns, right? And I think like a lot of these guys you might bring up or we will talk about later on that we might actually get, it's going to be that can they just keep up with this team where the expectations are there and mentally can you handle yourself on the court? And this is just another guy where I just think it's going to be wasting minutes.
No, I hear you. And, I'm looking at a couple of the other guys I have and I'm kind of overthinking, I had Wendell Carter Jr. Just ain't going to happen, like I just don't see it happen. I think Orlando's standing pat with him. I also have Poku just for you.
Oh,
in fact, I'll bring up the graphic
That's
just to show you. There you go. Look at that. Look at that.
That's number one right
Look
there.
at that face right there.
Beautiful.
Hold on.
I would not mind having that guy on the Suns. I'm telling you, in games where it might be a blowout or just we need that guy coming in for an injury, this guy is perfect. Suns fans will love him, right? Oh,
well, I mean, they just drafted Chet Holmgren, so it's like
I know
the Thin Towers. It's another skinny white guy. Like they might be over him. Yeah, the Thin Towers.
Yeah.
So it's like, like Coach Paul Founder says, feed that starving man. I wouldn't mind him coming in for a little bit. Fuck it, as long as you get rid of like Landry Shamet. I don't know.
I would, if we get him, I would spend $200 on a nice Poku jersey. I would.
Yes, you would. As I look at a lot of the trades that are left out there on the fringes, I don't know if necessarily there's anything out there that's going to truly, change the tide for the Suns. I do like what Coach Fallen Founder said. He says, I could really see us stand pat and then trade our expirings at the deadline. That's Crowder, Sarge, and Craig yields about 25 mil. I mean, I could definitely see something like that happening. I could see a team that tries to run it back, see what they have, and then make their decisions around the trade deadline with their assets versus trying to jump the gun right now and remake the culture of this team. Obviously if a KD is sitting right there, yeah, you make that opportunity. That's a once in life. That's a top 10 all-time NBA player, in my opinion, at least top 15. So you go for that. You go for that prize, but you don't have to step outside of, the norm just to you don't make transactions just to make transactions. And thankfully, James Jones, we know he typically doesn't make any transactions, especially at the trade deadline that could benefit the team.
No, he doesn't. And if KD's out there, like you brought up the Joe Johnson thing, if it's a KD, you do it. You absolutely do it. You can't look back on and be like, man, if we would have got KD, what would have happened? Because, we won't know. We don't know what Ayton's game is going to be down the line. We don't know. We have no idea. Cameron Johnson too. I love him to death, but he might just be who he is too. So we already know what KD is. He's a champion. You got to go after that guy. And I wouldn't have any regrets. If we don't win, it's like we made the right move. And then it'll be a disaster next offseason, but then we just call it quits. And I'm just done. I'm just like, okay, that was our best chance in a million years, and it's never going to happen then.
Yeah, just accept our fate.
Exactly.
As we typically do. I will throw out some potential free agent targets that I'm
Okay.
looking at. I'm putting together a series for Bright Side of the Sun where I'm going through some of our free agent targets. The only reason I want to talk about these right now is because when we go live on Thursday, I recommend we do like an 8:30 start, 30 minutes prior to kind of the deadline.
Yeah.
I want to put these names out into the ether beforehand, just so in case, if by chance the Suns make a decision and target one of these guys as a free agent, I want to reference this podcast and be like, see, I told you guys, I was right. I called one finally, because I do this every year and I never get one right, Matthew, ever. I never get these right. So with my first never getting this shit right pick, a free agent, unrestricted free agent from Toronto, Chris Boucher. Thoughts on Chris Boucher?
Yeah, nice, long defensive rebounder, defensive player, runs the rim. Just kidding. I don't really know too much about him. I just no, I've heard the name on podcasts and stuff. I didn't get to watch him a whole lot last year, so I couldn't tell you. What do you think though? Why do you such a damn fool. Why do you love him, John?
Why do I love him? Well, it's not that I love him, but I do think that he's
Okay.
a good fit. He's as you mentioned, very long. He's 6'9", power forward / center, a bench player. Again, this is when you have to play that what if wheel. Like, what if the Suns move off of Jay Crowder and Cameron Johnson comes in and picks up the number 4 position? Okay, well, who's backing him up? Chris Boucher could be that guy, right? Like, he's a guy who, he was paid about $6.5 million over the past, each season, the past 2 seasons. So didn't overwhelm, if you will. In 21.1 minutes game last season, he scored 9.4 points on 46.4% shooting. He's not a very good perimeter player, but he is somebody who, like you said, he rebounds, he blocks. He's got a defensive presence on that interior. So you would lose your perimeter presence from the second team unit, but what you would gain is somebody who just has grit. He's a guy who he's fought his way through the NBA. He's a very cerebral player. He's somebody who he had a turnaround last season. He started studying film twice a day. He credited his pregame meditation with helping clear his mind. Like, I like his approach to the game and how he recognized, like, hey, there's an opportunity for me to excel. How do I get there? And then he executed that. And I think that that's something that's valuable. And again, I like his length as a defensive player. So that's why I'm kind of a Boucher fan. I know that PJ Tucker's name has been thrown out there a lot, and obviously he's a former Phoenix Suns player, but with Chris Boucher, you get a 29-year-old, not a 36 or 7-year-old. So it's just like, I'd rather go with somebody who is a little bit younger, aligns with our timeline, and I don't know. I'm a fan of his.
Okay, well, let's make you happy. I feel like James Jones is really kind of giving the Suns fans what they want, all but Shamet.
Damn you, Shamet. So speaking of Shamet, I have a solution to that, and that is free agent unrestricted Bryn Forbes. How about this? I don't know if you remember, but once upon a time back in 2018, this guy went off against the Phoenix Suns. He went 5 for 5 from beyond the arc, 25 points and a win. It took the Suns record and made it 4-24 in DeAndre Ayton's rookie season. And, he's 6'2". He's 28-year-old point guard, and he's somebody who could, potentially, if we spin that what if wheel again, he's somebody who, if the Suns, what if the Suns move on from Landry Shamet? Bryn Forbes could be a target to fill that position. He can shoot effectively from beyond the arc, and I think that he's got a toughness to him that would be something that would be beneficial to the Suns. And again, he might be only 6'2", but 73% of his career possessions have come from playing beyond the arc. So, you take a look at how he's performed in his career, and I think that he's somebody who would be beneficial if we were to move on from Landry Shamet.
Yeah, the little guy that can be annoying, right? And for the opposing team, that's what it looks like to me. This kind of guy. You know what I mean? So I'm down, John. I love it. I wish I would have actually prepped and looked at these dudes.
Yeah, I only have like all that stuff just sitting in the notes for you to look at, but I mean, who gives a shit? All right.
These two dudes?
Yeah, that's all.
Are they in there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah, and I got links to their stats and everything, man. I make it nice.
Well, I didn't know we were gonna go over these guys today because they.
Well, I wanted to get all right. One more guy I want to talk about, and that is Los Angeles Laker, former Charlotte Hornet, and that is Malik Monk. Okay, and here's my why with Malik Monk, right? Guy who just didn't pan out for the Charlotte Hornets. right? 11th overall in the 2017 NBA draft. He was a three-point specialist in Kentucky. Comes in, doesn't have a really good first season, kind of falters his second season. His third season, he finally starts to get it together. He gets his first start ever, then he gets popped for like drugs, and he sits out for the remainder of the season, only 8 games, but he violated the league's anti-drug program. So 2020/21, decides, you know what, I'm gonna be a killer when I play the Suns. 29 points off the bench. Remember that game, Matthew? 29 points off the bench from Malik Monk, 124-121 victory over the Phoenix Suns that season. He shot 40.1% of his threes that season. And then Charlotte didn't bring him back. They backloaded their backcourt with a lot of guards to include LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and they just didn't want him. So he bet on himself. He took a $1.7 million veteran minimum, played with the Los Angeles Lakers, which benefited him because, as we mentioned earlier, a team that's very injury prone. So he started 37 of the 76 games in which he played, and he put together career highs in points, games played, minutes, assists, and true shooting percentage. And he shot 39.1% from deep for the Los Angeles Lakers this year. So he's going to hit the market. He probably has a little bit more value because he had a really a decent season. And Jake Fisher from the Bleacher Report thinks that he'll go anywhere between 5 and 10 million. Again, you get rid of Landry Shamet, Malik Monk. You can't tell me no to that, Matthew. You can't tell me
no. Monk's always been that guy. Like, even when he falls off because of injury or whatever, drug use, like, he's always a guy that's going to come back and be like a killer for you off the bat. I just think he's a guy that's always going to come in and out of the league, where just by name, like, he'll have good seasons, bad seasons, but I just think he can be a consistent guy if given the opportunity and if he is actually just actually there and prepared to play. So I've always loved Malik Monk, man, ever since he got drafted. I don't know if it was just a Bill Simmons thing, but I think he has.
Well, he was a Kentucky player, and I remember you and I watching him because he was on that team with De'Aaron Fox, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So, I mean, we saw him, he was a solid player. And I think, maybe there's some of that Bill Simmons has dusted off on us.
But no, he's always been a guy that I'm always worried about on the other team. I don't know why his name just pops out, and I'm just like, this guy can turn it on.
Well, he's explosive. He can dunk. He can shoot threes. Like, he's a guy who's on the precipice of being good. He just can't get over the hump. And he even said, like, when he went to LA, he's like, I'm going there to learn from these leaders. I want to learn how they approach the game. Right? And to Kenneth Payne's point, Monk won't leave the Lakers. Guess what? They can't afford him. They can't afford 5 to 10 million. They are locked in their salary cap issues unless they want to pay Malik Monk $5 or $10 million, which puts them into the luxury tax. So he ends up being like a $60 million player. Yeah. So Suns potentially, again, if you play the what if wheel, give it a spin, and it lands on move the fuck off of Landry Shamet's contract and trade that for some sort of asset.
That's the only thing on the wheel, though.
Then it's that all over the place. That, and like get rid of, Jay Crowder's gone and Cameron Johnson's now starting at 4. What do you do? But if that's what you land on, then Malik Monk is a viable option to bring in. You get rid of Landry Shamet for a couple assets, and then you go after Malik Monk. He's a player who, of the 3 guys I mentioned, like, Monk is the guy I really want to stay. He's the guy I really want to stay. And again, P-Dogs 006 says Monk don't care. He wants to stay with them on less than a minimum. We'll see, because this guy's been working his ass off for an opportunity to try to make some money, because he's been on a rookie deal. He didn't get extended from his rookie deal. He got 1.7 last year. Like, to get like a $5 to $10 million contract offer and go, fuck that, I'm staying with the shitty Lakers. I don't know, man. We'll see.
No, yeah. I mean, those guys will probably be gone. Who knows this year? What's going to happen to the Lakers? I think it starts with LeBron, right? Free agency always starts with LeBron. That was my chair. I did not fart, if anybody heard that, all right?
Did not.
It always starts with LeBron. So wait for LeBron, then the next move's Monks. And you know what? I would be happy to have Monk. I really would. Seriously.
Yeah. So we'll see. Asset. So again, Chris Boucher, Bryn Forbes, Malik Monk, 3 guys I'm throwing out there as targets for the Phoenix Suns. I got a couple more I might write about for Bright Side of the Sun prior to the free agency extravaganza that's going to occur. But, until then, let's go, man. Like, let's go. Oh, one last thing before we get out of here. Matthew, everybody wants to know, how do you feel? Devin Booker, Kendall Jenner, it's over.
They were seen together today.
So?
I don't know. It's, you know what?
Do you believe
right
it?
after it happened, I'm like, you know what? She wasn't good for him, but it's tough.
Why do you say that?
Because I was thinking, I'm like, is it because Booker wanted kids? And I'm getting in my own head, just thinking like why they actually broke up. I think Booker wants kids. He wants to be more serious I don't think Kendall can do it right. She has to sell her body and stuff for images. She can't have a kid right now, right?
Yeah, especially how
So I think
skinny
that's what
she
it
is. I mean, like,
I mean, she probably could and like just take it off and then put it back on or something. I don't know. She could do something.
has it
like that,
has
I'm
it
sure.
affect you mentally, spiritually, emotionally?
Nothing good lasts. Relationships nowadays, I don't believe in any of it. So nothing lasts forever. It really doesn't. John, what you have is good, I'm sure, but everything else is it's just a piece of shit, and everything's gonna fall apart one day for anybody in a relationship. So I was kind of prepared, except for Chip and Joanne on Fixer Upper.
Amen. Hey,
Yeah.
don't you ever fuck with Chip and Joanne.
Yeah.
That's the name of our next podcast. Don't you fuck with Chip and Joanne. Well, I think on that note, Jamsters, it's time for us to get out of here. Again, 8:30 Thursday night, 30 minutes before the draft, not the draft, before free agency begins, Arizona time. Matthew and I will have a podcast. We'll talk about any rumors that are going on at that point, and then live react to anything that's going on relative to free agency. It's always a fun time because, again, July 1st at midnight is when free agency begins in the NBA, which is 9 p.m. Arizona time. So until then, thank you for joining another edition of the Suns Jam Session podcast. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you happen to be consuming this content. If you're watching along live or at a different time on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button while you're here. And again, if you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5-star rating. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. You can follow me at Darth Voida on Twitter. You can follow Matthew on Twitter.
Matthew, let's see.
And of course, you can follow the show at Suns Jam. We look forward to seeing you again Thursday night. Thank you, Jamster, for putting up with another episode of us. Yeah, let's go, Matthew.
Let's go. Go home and love your family.